Joe Judge, the head coach of the New York Giants. Coach, I was just joking that the fact that we had more technical difficulties trying to line up a radio call than you guys did in the NFL draft is really something. But, pandemic aside, just how different was this draft being one of the key decision makers for what the Giants were doing?
You know what? I think it was more different early in the process when we were all getting used to working remotely with each other. I think the advantage we had was we went through about a solid, month of virtual meetings with the scouts and the personnel department, talking to all the players. That by the time we got to the draft, it became the normal for us, which is a little strange saying. But we had great communication. We were able to navigate it. Our IT people did a great job. But as far as just the actual virtual part of it, to me, the weirdest part was not standing in a room with someone on draft day, looking at the board together, where normally that's a large part. Everyone's looking at the same thing, pointing at a tag, comparing players. And, virtually you just got to kind of talk about the players as they are and simulate it.
You mentioned, Coach, and thanks for the time today. We really appreciate it. You mentioned that, you got more and more comfortable in the process as time went along. Lions GM Bob Quinn said, they're gonna embrace some of the changes as an organization that they went through here, and they like some of the stuff they did in terms of video conferencing. Can you see the same with the Giants organization?
I'll tell you what I can. When we first started out the whole process, whether it was working remotely with the coaching staff, still mapping out the spring, working remotely with the scouts, going through the draft process, I think what we all found is we can get it done. It really wasn't an issue. You can be efficient. You can work from home. You've got to be disciplined with your time, map it out, and set some boundaries in your household. But I'll tell you what now, there's a lot of things I think came up through this process that will show their heads, in the future. Do I think the draft itself will be virtual? My opinion is I don't think it will be. However, I think there's going to be other elements of the off-season that may very well be.
Do you want to get specific with any of those, Coach? Because you're also into your off-season program, which is happening all virtually as well. Are there things that you found you actually like about that, as opposed to just being in a room with guys?
To be completely honest with you, to me, you can never substitute just being in the same room with the players.
Sure.
That's one aspect of the virtual program that you would much rather do in persons with the players. However, maybe it opens up for a little bit more window of time with the players that we can designate and design to do virtual. Maybe it opens up more windows. I'll tell you what I really liked was through the process was the ability to be able to talk with the players, talking about the draft prospects, and hit a bunch of them throughout the course of a night. You may talk to 4 or 5 guys where you could talk in the past that way, but we didn't use it as readily. And if you're doing a pro day, you may only see 1 or 2 guys a day. We were able to hit a chunk of them, really as a staff. And, where sometimes you may have a pro day where a guy's on the West Coast and other guys on the East Coast, we're on 2 different players. We were able to bridge everyone together and hit the players at the same time. So that was definitely beneficial for us. I'd say to be more specific into what I think in the future could be beneficial is, look, this just could be something, as a coaching staff or personnel in the office to turn around and just say, hey, we're going to take a week and work from home, or maybe it's a process where you can do your draft reports at home and report in and meet through Zoom. I think that, cuts out some commute time, especially on Fridays where guys get out of the office sometimes a little bit earlier. Just tell them, hey, we're going to wake up, work till lunch together, meet throughout the day, and then have a weekend. So, nothing's in stone, but there's definitely been some ideas. We've made sure we made notes on and marked down that going forward, we can use it to our advantage.
Yeah, and I think there was always this sort of stigma that football coaches had to be in the office 20 hours a day, and had to sleep in the office and couldn't leave, and maybe, one maybe potential silver lining here is it's eased up things like that. Coach, I'm obviously you're trying to develop chemistry with some of your new players here, this virtual sort of off-season program. But I'm curious about the chemistry with the coaches. Most of the coaches that you hired are people that you have coached with before in the past, except for Jason Garrett. And, that's going to be such a crucial relationship the between you and your offensive coordinator, and obviously the wealth of experience that he brings as after a decade as the Dallas Cowboys head coach. Has it been harder to develop that relationship because you can't be in the same room with a guy, you can't read the body language, and you just can't build a foundation to that relationship yet?
I think the thing that benefited us as an entire staff was when we got everybody in the building and hired everyone, we went full tilt together. And we really got a good solid month and a half, 2 months of working together in the building before we broke off and had to go remotely. And that really has carried us through a large bit, that we were able to get solid foundations on relationships and a feel for each other. Now, I'd say this, in terms of working remotely, that doesn't cut out the hours. We've still been working exhausting hours together, which has really paid off for us a lot. And look, there's been a lot of, figuring each other out, figuring out how to work virtually. We feel like we've closed a lot of gaps on that. But in terms of the development of the relationships, we've really benefited from the early process we had. We've carried through that virtually. Look, I think everyone in the country right now is figuring out that you've got to find different ways to, have interaction with people. Whether it's, all the wives in the neighborhood drinking wine over Zoom, or it's, meeting as a coaching staff and taking time in a meeting to tell a story, tell a joke, kind of get off track a little bit just to have some personality with it. Talking to our coaches, going through kind of draft notes and recaps and things we can, work on, improve on, or, eliminate mistakes from a coaching standpoint. One of the things that came up was just the benefit of being in the same room, as you would say, virtually for over the course of 3 days. You're talking through draft picks and you're working, but there's a lot of small talk that happens too. There's a lot of joking around. You have people's wives poking in and kind of smiling, waving to the camera, or kids coming sitting on their dad's laps. So you get a little bit more exposure to the guy and insight as to how he is, when he's away from the office. And to me, it's little things like that that really bridge the gap.
Coach, going through this draft for the first time as a head coach, and on the 3 days, not the build-up, but Thursday night, Friday night, and then Saturday, how was that experience for you?
Well, it's different than it was in the past, obviously, because of the responsibility you carry. I'd say the attention to the draft and the movement of the personnel throughout the league, that held to be the same. You still watch very, anxiously, and as you're bored, you're taking tags off. Our IT department did a great job with the virtual board that if someone was picked, the name just disappeared. So you can kind of see how the, available picks, are moving and people you've identified as guys you want to draft. The attention to what was going on around the league and then, kind of calculating your next move for best available and, how that matches up somewhat to what you may need at a certain point in the draft, that remained the same. But obviously the interaction and decision-making process, until you're in the head coach seat, working directly with, the GM and the owner, you can't really replicate that.
Coach, I'm curious about the offensive line, and I thought it was a funny quote from Dave where he said, it's time to end this storyline. It's been too big of a talking point all about the Giants for a while here. How about Thomas here, Thomas and Solder? Is it a fluid situation in terms of left side and right side?
Yeah, listen, we're going to play the best five guys, period. And at this point, there's no depth charts that are established. We have a lot of talented guys. We're going to let training camp sort that out for us. Whether it's, guys playing guard or center, whether it's left or right tackle, we're going to find the best pieces for our team to have success. And again, the only way we can do that is put them on the grass, let them compete, let them figure it out and sort it out itself. Honestly, it's fluid in terms of, we've just got names listed. We're not trying to, at this point, say this is our starter at any position. Everyone's going to have an equal chance to compete, and that's, I'm telling the players that's 100% true. I don't care how you got here. I don't care what you're getting paid. I really don't care any of those external factors. To me, it's all about what you do on the field, what you put on tape consistently, and the trust factor that the players and coaches have with you to put you out there on Sunday.
Joe Judge, our guest, head coach of the New York Giants. There is a decision, Coach, to make about Evan Ingram and Jabril Peppers, though, with their options that need to be exercised by, I believe, May 3rd or 4th. And I'm curious because you've been hesitant to talk about any players that you haven't gotten to work with directly. But here's this decision that has to be made. Ingram has an injury history. That changes things because the contract would be guaranteed for injury. Do you think Evan Ingram, that the franchise will pick up his fifth-year option?
Well, first off, I'm not a doctor. I'll let our medical staff take care of that. I'm very excited about working with both players. Ingram, Peppers, both these guys bring a lot of energy to our program. Can't wait to see them on the field competing, with the other guys on our team and eventually against opponents. I'm not going to comment on contracts, on the team. I'm not going to comment on coaches' contracts ever either. I can tell you I'm very excited about it. We're having internal talks about a lot of issues at this point, and that's kind of on the docket that we'll go ahead and sort out over the next few days.
Coach, how about Golden? You guys placed a tag on him today. He had 10 sacks for the Giants a year ago. Is Golden a player you'd like to see back with this team?
Obviously, we think he's a talented player. He's been a great locker room guy. I have a lot of respect for him from afar. I haven't worked with him in person yet. But, hey, listen, we did what we thought was best for the team in terms of, using tags, and that's kind of, things are allocated through the way the CBA and the league works. And, at this point right now, we're exploring a lot of options for, roster additions. It's a fluid process throughout the year. You don't stop after the draft. You don't stop after free agency. It really goes through the off season, continues into the season. Eventually you have the trade deadline, stops that kind of movement. But there's always transactions of claiming off waiver wires and tryouts and things of that nature. So at no point are we going to say that, we're established or stopped or finalized on the roster. We'd like to get to a point, sooner than later that we feel solid about players and the positions we're in. But there's external factors you can't always control that may, create movement at the positions.
Joe Judge is our guest, and Joe, because you're our coach, because you have to deal with the players on an interpersonal level. The tender that you guys put on Golden, shrewd move by the organization, and one that will certainly help you guys, but might not create great feelings for the player because it could be looked at as a way to sort of cap his value on the open market. Do you have to consider that that it might be an unhappy employee if you decide to make a move like this?
Again, I'm not going to go into the contract talk part of it. I'm excited about the prospect of talking with Marcus and see where it goes from there.
It's interesting, because I also saw the comment that you had for Andrew Thomas, who obviously in the excitement of getting picked by you guys, said basically, I want to win a Super Bowl. And you cut that down off at the knees. You said no predictions, no comparisons, be grateful for the opportunity. I don't want to hear anything about Super Bowls or any of that crap. And John Mara said that you sounded like Bill Parcells. I'm curious, though, for you, for a guy for making predictions, for showing confidence, does that hurt what you're trying to build in some way?
Look, I think the biggest thing with young guys they have to understand is they don't know what it takes to be a professional football player yet. That's why they have coaches. That's why they have spring program. That's why they have training camp. That's why they have rookie seasons. They have to learn how to be a professional football player. The reality is every player that got selected or signed this past weekend is now at the bottom of the totem pole in terms of their ability to compete as a professional. The advantage they have right now is young legs. That's the only advantage they have. Everyone they're going to compete with has been playing at professional level football. They understand, how to use techniques better. They understand the league and the schemes they're going to see better. They can react mentally faster because of their knowledge. They emotionally can handle the duration of a season better. Everything that goes into being a football player, with the exception of possibly having younger, fresher legs, goes to the vets. That's a reality. So everyone has confidence. You should be on top of the world when you get drafted. It's a milestone, in your career. It's a milestone event in your life. And you should be on top of that mountain and, feel 10 feet tall and bulletproof.
Right.
Sometimes you just need a little reminder that, hey, listen, let's not get caught up in the emotion right now and create an expectation for yourself, that's going to make it a little bit tougher for you to transition to being a professional football player. The only thing they have to worry about at this point right now is showing up, working hard, learning, and improving every day. And that's the only thing they can do, to turn around and say, a prediction on their career or comparison to another player who's already had a great career. Like, they've got enough to worry about with just showing up, learning how to be a pro, and improving day by day. We don't need to go ahead and put that on their plate or write a check someone else has to cash for. So, so what we're really trying to do is just give them a reminder that, hey, listen, it's going to be emotional at this point. Let's not go ahead and put something out there you're going to have to regret at some point.
Coach, curious here, your experience, and vast amount of it, with Saban and Belichick. And people want to draw comparisons. We know about the coaching trees and the like, and certainly your introductory press conference, you hit it out of the park. I'm curious about those two, though. From you as a football coach, I'm not talking about personality. I'm just talking about kind of like, football mindset. What's the best thing you took away from your experience with Saban and your best thing you took away from your experience with Bill?
Well, first off, with both of them, there's way more to talk about than we could cover in any one phone call.
Sure.
But I think with both guys, the thing that really runs similar to me is the absolute attention to detail, of being thorough, being prepared, and making sure that everything's accounted for. You can deal with a lot of things. I don't like dealing with surprises. So to me, it's let's over-prepare. Let's make sure that everything's accounted for so that when something comes up, we have an answer for it. And that's important. The players rely on us to give them the information and to put them in a situation to be successful. And that's our responsibility as coaches to make sure that we're thorough enough that they can go out there and play confident, knowing that whatever comes up, they have an answer for. So the attention to detail, being prepared, look, I learned tremendous amounts worked for Coach Belichick on personnel and how to use your players and why it's important, situational football. But I'd say overall, it's, the biggest thing that's going to tie forward in any avenue you go is just the level of being prepared and how do you put your players in the right position.
And Coach, talking about, being prepared and not only having, guys that can play multiple positions. When you look at McKinney, the safety coming out of Alabama that you guys drafted in the second round, I mean, you've got a vast amount of depth there at that safety spot, but McKinney's a guy that creates an opportunity here. You can use him defensively in a lot of different ways.
Well, I think right now with our defensive backs, we have a lot of versatility across the board, which is exciting because within our schemes, we're going to have a lot of movement week by week, whether it's by matchup or by how certain teams play. So I think right now, the premium we've really put on versatility is being met across the board with all of our players. And that's something we want to not just preach, but we have to practice that, and we have to make sure we find the right guys who have the ability to do that.
Coach, but you guys didn't add any more offensive weapons in the draft. Was that by design? Is that the way the board fell? And do you feel like your work is sort of done? Like if the season started tomorrow, how confident are you with the group you have right now that this is a team in an offense that can put up a lot of points?
Look, we're trying to put up one more point than the opponent. All right, so whatever that takes to do, and that's offense, defense, and kicking game working together. I'm excited about working with our offensive players. I have a lot of confidence that the players are working hard, that our coaches will put them in the right position. Something that gets lost sometimes in the draft process is you come out with a certain number of selections, and how'd that factor into everyone else who was available? Well, look, we took the best player available at the time, and we did what we thought was best for the Giants. We're very happy with how we came out of this draft and the pieces we have to build. Our guys are working hard right now. It's a different type of situation with the virtual program, but they're training hard at home. I have a lot of confidence that our team is going to put the work in and show up prepared and ready to go and compete.
Coach, schematically, developing that pass rush. There's not the natural edge rusher there. Golden, obviously, we'll see if he's back with the Giants coming off a year in which he had 10 sacks a year ago, for former head coach Pat Shurmur. What about Patrick Graham, your defensive coordinator, and generating a rush and maybe doing it without the natural edge rushers that we see all across the league?
Well, first off, in terms of the natural edge rush thing, I think it's important to remember that there's a lot of guys in this league who have a lot more production than maybe people expect from them. Okay. Jared Allen and Rob Ninkovich were two of the most impactful guys coming off the edge and playing their positions during their time in the league. Both entered the league as long snappers. Okay, so people forget that sometimes you come in, the expectations don't always match up to what you're capable of doing, what you will do in your career. We have a lot of confidence with all the guys on our roster. Will we use scheme? We will. But do we have confidence in the tool set and the abilities of the guys on our roster? Absolutely. And, look, we may just go ahead and turn out some days and just straight rush, and some days maybe a little more scheme, but that's going to be dictated based on what we think is best for the team at that moment, versus a specific opponent. This whole concept that we don't have a top-tier rusher, listen, we'll see how that shakes out when we get to the field. We're going to let our guys work before we make any decisions, or predictions in terms of what we think their skill set is. We have confidence in the guys on our team. I know they're working hard, and I'm excited to see them on the field.
Coach, I'm curious if, one of the big offseason storylines is obviously Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski going to Tampa Bay. I'm curious if you reached out to either of them to wish them well.
I have not. We've been so busy with our team. I mean, obviously, you can't go through any type of sports world news without, seeing that. And, look, have a lot of respect for both those players. They're great players. We had great experiences together for a long time, at another place. I'm sure they're going to work hard and do what they can to help their team. And right now, that's what I'm focused is the guys on our roster and how we can use them to help our team.
And, Coach, I didn't know it was going to be Andrew Thomas, the answer to the quiz question about the guy that was going to get you to finally say Daniel's name. That is going to go down in Giants lore. As you went out of your way not to say the quarterback's name. Once you drafted Andrew Thomas, he's going to help out Daniel. Finally, Joe Judd said Daniel Jones' name.
Hey. I've never been trying to avoid saying someone's name.
No, I'm just joking around with you, Coach.
Sometimes it's the context it gets asked, and then I don't want to go ahead and put a label on a player or create expectations for any of our guys. Right now I think the fairest thing for our players is give them the opportunity to learn and to work and then go out there, compete, and demonstrate their value.
You know how quarterbacks usually get gifts for their offensive linemen at the end of the season? Jones should just send a gift over now because now it's assured that he's going to be the quarterback. Coach, because of the success, that you were, you were with it in New England and in Alabama as well, is there a single game that you think back to professionally that had the most profound effect on your career?
There's been a lot of them. I would think specifically if you had to look into one game that maybe really impact the way I look at a lot of things. There's a couple you could reflect at. The game we played against Atlanta in the Super Bowl that was a big game. But to me, we played a game against Denver in 2013, and what we refer to as the wind game. And it was a cold night, but the wind was almost unmanageable for going a certain direction. And we went into halftime at a very similar, score disadvantage as the Super Bowl. And, that's one of the ones we went in and just made a decision, take it play by play, series by series, and go forward with it. It not only tied into, the conviction of the team to do what they need to do to win the game, but it also tied in a lot of the situations that we use and how you can use situational football really to your advantage. We ended up winning the game in overtime. That was a game, if you remember, we took the coin toss and actually took the win instead of the ball. Everyone kind of thought we were crazy. And, Coach made a tremendous decision on that one right there, and it paid off for us. That's, there's a lot of games that stick out, but you kind of remember games in this profession for lessons you learned. And that was one right there that when you came out of it, I learned a tremendous amount of lessons that really when you got to that Super Bowl against Atlanta, that was really the game, I think, in everyone who was there that night that was on that previous team that stuck out. We had a number of guys on the team that, you could, without going too much in detail, you knew that game was on the minds of others that, hey, it's been done before. Let's just use it to our advantage.
No, fair. And Coach, when you go back to that game against the Falcons, I mean, it was an unbelievable comeback. Did you get a sense on that sideline when things started to turn for the Pats that night?
No, I think it all comes back to just you work as a team, you put yourself through tough practices, you work through different situations. You just have confidence in the man next to you because they've worked to prepare and do their job best they can. And to me, in all those tough games, it always comes back to that. The confidence you have in yourself through your preparation, the confidence you have in your teammate, because they've had to go through the ringer as well to be on the field next to you.
Coach, Maggie and I had your owner, John Mara, on, co-owner, right after they hired you. And, he gave you a great accolade. And I wanted to see what your response was. He said you were the most impressive coaching interview that he's ever been a part of. I mean, that is high accolades from coming from John Mara. What is your response to that?
It's going to be more important what I do this fall, what we do as a team collectively. So I'm thankful for the opportunity. Now I have a greater responsibility than just getting in and talking through an interview.
I got to be honest, the fact that you went to the wrong Penn Station and still got to the interview early, that to me was impressive, Coach, because you're not the first person who's made that mistake. It's incredibly confusing, and kudos to you for getting there on time.
And just adjust on the fly, you know what I mean?
That's it.
No, we know. Listen, you're in New York now. That's what you have to do. Moose asked before about your relationship with Belichick, and, he took over in Cleveland when I believe he was the exact same age that you are now. Did you ever talk to him about his days in Cleveland and perhaps things you can glean from his experience there that you might be able to apply now?
I'll tell you what, I'm very appreciative, Coach, of, all the time he's ever spent with me talking through a number of different situations and lessons he's learned throughout his career. Without going too specific into, anything from any of his stops, I'll let him speak on that himself. But, to me, I try to, any coach I'm ever around, whether it's the head coach, other assistants, I try to listen and be very attentive. I try to soak up anything that I can gain from them. And, the entire time I was with Coach Belichick, I always had a consciousness that, this is something people would pay to be able to do, is sit here and just listen to someone talk and share experiences and wisdom. So you better pay attention, not waste it. And, look, I've learned a lot from him, learned a lot from every coach I've ever been around. And I try to tie those lessons to what I do every day.
Coach, just a follow-up on that with the relationship with players. Do you feel like you're the kind of coach who wants to really have that tight bond with your players in terms of friendship, or do you feel like you want to be a coach that maybe keeps players a little bit at an arm's length, where it's clear I'm the coach, you're the player, which it kind of feels like Belichick kind of does from afar, or do you want to be like a friend to the players and be intimately involved in their lives?
I'm not trying to really be anything outside my own personality. Some people may interpret that as maybe being friendlier at arm's length or however they see it or interpret themselves, but, I'm just going to be myself. I just know look, coaches coach, players play, and that's the way games go. And I'm going to be myself, and however they interpret or react to my personality, that's fine, but I'm going to be consistent with them so they know what to expect.
Well, Coach, Giant fans are excited that you're here and certainly love the messaging and can't wait to see your team take the field in the fall, and looking forward to it. Coach, congratulations on a successful draft, and thanks for a couple minutes this morning. Maggie and I certainly appreciate it.
Hey, listen, really appreciate your time. I really do. Thanks for everything you guys are doing.
Yeah, you got it, Coach.